Okay, well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight for our webinar. My name is Rose Legis. I am with Black Orlando Tech. All right, Black Orlando Tech is a nonprofit working to increase the awareness, activities, network, and resources for local minorities who pursue careers in technology. Our goal and mission is to increase those numbers by 10,000 people by the year 2025. Studies show that the community is dramatically underrepresented within the tech skilled workforce, and our organization is seeking to close these gaps through grassroots and direct to community activities. So a couple of number of upcoming events for Black Orlando Tech. On Saturday, we're kicking off our Tech Startup Series with our first webinar titled Ideation, Positioning Your Startup Idea for Success. July 22nd, we'll have our monthly webinar on telling your tech story on paper and in person. And then August, we have Center Stage, a spotlight on local Black tech businesses. September, we'll do a free and frugal website tips. October 21st, we're discussing mental health, Black mental health in the workplace and protecting it. And on November 18th, we made it, especially with 2020 and all the things it's bringing us. We made it in the BOT 2020 wrap up. Building BOT's tech cohorts. We are pushed those back until August 11th, so they'll start the second round of these cohorts will start August 11th. And so if you are interested in learning Amazon Web Services, data analytics, digital marketing, Go programming, and many more, please go to our website to get more information and to sign up for these cohorts. A little bit about our Tech Startup Series. It was created for Black tech entrepreneurs to assist in taking their startups from idea to scale. We aim to provide a critical information needed to launch and sustain a tech startup. It is exclusive. It gives the participants exclusive access to professionals with expertise in key areas of tech entrepreneurship. Space is limited. We wanted to keep this private, very intimate setting in terms, and that way give the participant more focus and attention to the areas that they are having trouble on and have questions on. So space is limited. We've been filling up a lot of the spaces that we have. Registration closes this Saturday at 10 a.m. So please, if you are interested, if this is something that would be a benefit to you, definitely look into it and sign up. Below we have the webinar topics and the dates. Also, please remember to like, share, and tag anyone who will find this information beneficial. All right, so today's webinar is Policies, Procedures, Pricing, Navigating Government Contracting. My name is Rose Legis. I am the Strategic Partnership and Resources Chair with Black Orlando Tech. I'm going to be your moderator today. I am also the CEO of RL Engineering and Tech Solutions. We have with us today Sharice Wilkes. I met Sharice, I think it's been about 2.5 years now. I met her at a inventors convention in St. Pete, and Sharice was there to speak to us about business basics and intellectual property and just the different things that we needed to know for those who had inventions and were inventors, and things that we needed to know in order to start a business and scale up. And I just clicked with her ever since. And
about the wonderful world of funding as well. I gave y'all a lot of good tips.
Yes, a lot. She dropped a lot of nuggets in, and so she's just been amazing. We've collaborated on a number of different initiatives in different areas, and I'm so excited to have her with us tonight to talk to us about government contracting. Go ahead.
All right, so good evening, everybody. My name is Sharice Wilkes. I am an administrator for the federal government. I've worked in state and local government over an 18-year career, also working in the private sector and with a lot of nonprofits. My zone of genius is actually strategic business development, as well as strategically acquiring funds for these organizations, and then also helping them actually manage those funds through social and capital projects. So I absolutely love creating lots of public-private partnerships and basically just figuring out alternative solutions and strategies to some of the common goals that all organizations face, which at the end of the day is really to fund your missions, whether you're a business or anything else. So I am here today to teach you guys about government contracting. As working in government, I have been on evaluation committees. I have drafted the RFP scopes for requests for proposals. And in addition, being on the private sector side, I do have government contracts, and I have been a government contractor for about at least 6-7 years now. So started out very small and have moved at least into 6 figures, and know that I'm very capable of landing those multi-million-dollar contracts. So that's the goal, to do that next. So I am speaking from experience. And so hopefully some of the knowledge that I share with you guys today will help you decide whether or not this is the right opportunity for you. So a little bit about the company. I am the president and owner of Affinity Consulting Group, NEFL. We are a management consulting firm. We are 10 years old, and we do have our minority and women-owned certification. I've got 6 contractors under me that work with me, a lot of affiliate partnerships, and we do have gross sales in the mid 6 figures. We are all credentialed grant professionals, contract managers, project managers, and also in emergency management. So we handle a swath of different types of projects. And also our impact to date is that we have acquired over 77 million for clients and managed 300 million, like I said, in funding with grants, contracts, loans, all types of stuff for employers and our clients. So what do? We provide services where we help you plan it, which is the strategic planning part. We also help you fund those ideas and projects, and then we help you manage that funding so that you do not get caught in an auditor's eyes or in their trail. We provide research and analytics, government and public administration, training and development, community outreach and development, and business and economic development. And later this fall, we are launching our training academy called the Fund Finders Academy, which is where you'll see the branding on this PowerPoint. That's basically going to be an educational service of Affinity Consulting Group, where we are teaching you classes on things from grants, contracts, business funding, project management, and other business advisory services. We basically want to give back to the community and teach you guys the things that we have learned in the system, working within all of these government entities and working with our private partners, and teach you guys how to do this well so that you can succeed and grow your businesses. So that's how we're going to give back. All right. So on the agenda today, we are going to discuss, please ask questions as we go along, because I like for this to be more interactive. We're going to talk briefly. I'm going to breeze past the policies really quickly because there are way too many to name. But we're going to talk about some of the things that government does buy as it relates to your companies. And then also we'll talk about why you should get certified, what are the strengths there, and so a couple of other topics there.
And we do have
really quickly. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
I was like, something's happening with the slides here.
So while we're getting the slides,
huh? Oh, so I see we have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So DJ has asked, what have we won contracts in precisely? So I've won contracts over in the territory for Puerto Rico to do economic development projects over there, and work with a coalition trying to secure funds to enhance like career strategy and pipelines for the island. They were working on trying to get more engineers to stay on the island and work in the electric authority and things of that nature. And this was pre-Hurricane Maria, so this was a couple of years ago. I have worked for educational institutions, charter schools, helping them secure contracts in Florida, Louisiana. Let's see, disaster recovery services. That's a big one because of the work that I've done with FEMA and DHS. So I have some multi-million dollar opportunities that I'm pursuing for government clients there so that we can continue to do long-term recovery for cities and counties. What else is there? Worked with nonprofits and private sector entities doing community development projects that combined real estate, creating community and youth centers, giving everything from getting a football field built. Like I've literally done a whole lot. But in terms of my own private contracts with the company, those are some of the examples of things that we've been able to secure. Work with communities, some Native American tribes, South Florida. I have a couple of contracts down there, and Jacksonville, Tampa. So yeah, I've been all over the state and pretty busy and not home sometimes. So hopefully that helps. Mm-hmm. Should I try to navigate this myself?
What slide should we be on?
Back up for one.
Back up.
Yeah. All right. So we'll try this and move forward. Mm-hmm. All right. So in terms of government contracting, we're going to go through some of the things that you need to know to evaluate whether or not this is a good opportunity for you and your company, or if you are creating a company, a strategy that you should incorporate from the beginning in terms of trying to figure out what your total business model should look like. In terms of doing any government contracting, all government entities have a contracting process. So that is at the federal level, the state level, local government level, down to special districts such as school districts, port authorities. Every government entity has a contracting process. And so as such, they have individual policies. Each entity will have their own set of policies. In the state of Florida, many of the government entities follow Florida guidelines for purchasing. And so I listed the Florida statutes there in case anybody is a nerd and likes to read statutes in legal language. You can certainly take a look at those and read more about the Florida, the guidelines set forth by the state of Florida that pertain to how government entities should do contracting within the state. At the federal level, you have a lot of different federal regulations. SBA has their own, the General Services Administration has some. There's an entire document related to grants and contracting. So again, glossing over the federal level, those would be way too many to name. And since this is an overview class, I definitely did not want to overwhelm you guys, but I kind of named some of the most pertinent ones for the state of Florida in case you want to read those. And then also for one of the recent changes that has come up is that the certification process, if you are women-owned and an economically disadvantaged business, the certification processes are changing at the federal level effective October 1st. And so I put that code of federal regulation there so that entities where that qualifies, they can go ahead and read that regulation and know what's happening.
Okay.
Let's move forward. So let's talk about some of the things that the government buys. The government literally buys a lot of goods and services. I was recently on a call on Monday with the General Services Administration at the federal level. And obviously with COVID-19 happening, you guys may have also seen in the news that a lot of local communities have gotten funding. The state has gotten funding from the U.S. Treasury Department. And as such, they are ramping up to buy a lot of goods and services. And so a lot of the things that the federal government spoke about purchasing right now happen to deal with masks. If you have sewing equipment, you can make a lot of masks, put logos on them, etc. They're buying that. That is a great need. As we know, the CDC will be updating their guidelines again, where, we've already seen they're going to start requiring most people to wear a mask if you are outside in public. So that means that the public, as well as federal employees and all government employees, are going to be buying more masks if you do not have access to the N95, N99, and some of these other masks. So they're asking for anybody who makes apparel to basically, sign up to be a vendor, sign up to produce these masks and basically sell that good back to the federal, the state, and the local governments. Some of the other areas that they needed, janitorial services. A lot of our buildings are partially reopened or opening up. If you have a cleaning business, get the right equipment. Follow the EPA guidelines. You will be able to get contracts not only in the private sector, but also, again, local, state, and federal contracts. Money is waiting out there for people to clean the businesses on a more frequent basis and clean them with the right and appropriate cleaning materials as well. So that's like a huge area that they are pumping money into. That's not going to go away, at least over the next year, because of COVID-19. Some of the other areas that I have researched and seen as it kind of relates to tech companies, if you do marketing, there are contracts out there for marketing companies and professionals, social media content. All of this sort of stuff happens because government entities need to communicate with the masses. And oftentimes, speaking for myself in that role too, government employees don't have time to create flyers. They don't have time to create these graphics. Yeah. They're not going to go on Canva. You might see a whole bunch of clip art or something happening. There's just a need for those services. And oftentimes they will basically contract that service out because they don't have time to produce the materials themselves. Also posting on social media to get to the masses. All of that type of stuff definitely can be procured by the government. Software, if you have software companies, I saw a couple of opportunities where they were looking for a particular type of software. Education departments in particular look for a lot of software, especially because kids are at home right now and also college students. Mm-hmm. So there are opportunities there if you have software for designed for education, where you can get these contracts at a university, at a school district, at the State Department of Education, with the U.S. Department of Education. So any software and apps that you might be developing, those are opportunities for you to sell your services and your goods to these government entities. Consulting, grant administration, any sort of writing, technical writing, there's guides that have to be written. You do electrical. I have seen ask for or requests for quotes for baby food, for instance, in a disaster. After a hurricane comes, they need goods and services. It can be water. it can be baby food, it can be toilet paper, it can be paper towel. Literally anything that you can think of that is an essential service, they're buying it. Mm-hmm. So these are just a couple of keywords that I put out there. If you paint, there's always public buildings that need to be refreshed and updated and painted on the inside and the outside. So your painting business can get contracts to do that at government buildings. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's just a lot of opportunities out there, and it is definitely a way for businesses to scale up.
And the government, they list out what they're looking for within mm-hmm. those contracts. So they'll identify typically not step by step, but they'll identify the key points or the key even for cleaning, what type of cleaning products they will want you to use. They'll list it out. So it's very straightforward.
Exactly. All right, let's move forward. So let's talk about the money for a quick second, because I like to go ahead and get to the point. The reason you want to do government contracting is because, honestly, in layman's terms, it is big business. Mm-hmm. You kind of have a little bit of a perfect storm here. There are a lot of government employees retiring. Younger people are not necessarily coming into the ranks in public sector. So when there's a gap, and there's also a gap in knowledge, they sometimes have to also privatize some functions, privatize certain activities so that they can get additional help in the meantime until they can hire people. Also, what you have going on right now is the fact that there is a recession that is happening. So where you're going to see the economy restrict on the private level, oftentimes government can be just a little bit safer, even though they do have to cut back on some things, but they don't cut back on essential services. Mm-hmm. They may, reduce expenses for unfunded mandates or possibly a few social services, but roads still have to be paved. School still has to occur, and kids have to go to school, and they need software, books, etc. So there are definitely some opportunities that are more recession-proof than others. But at the federal level, there is a website called usaspending.gov. I took this particular screenshot from that website, and you can literally use the advanced search and type in and look for contracts, grants, etc., or who received them. So across the entire U.S., in fiscal year 2019, the federal government spent $26.2 billion in contracts. That is a lot of money. Mm-hmm. In Florida alone, it was 26 billion. The federal government, it was like 117. So 26 billion came to Florida alone and to Florida companies. And most of you are based here in Florida. So the opportunities are endless if you are hungry for it and you definitely want to pursue some of these contracts, and your business is poised to pursue some of these contracts and you're positioned for that. So this is just a little sliver of the pie. You do not have to do business within the state of Florida. You can do business in multiple states. I actually spoke to a business yesterday, and the young woman sells software, and she had acquired contracts in Texas and hadn't even scratched the surface of acquiring contracts here in Florida. And she lives here in Orlando. So, she has her eyes set on 3 different states to do business with them, and she's well on her way to do that. Mm-hmm. So I just kind of want to plant some seeds for some of you guys that, if you want this opportunity, it's out here for you to have. You just have to work really, really hard, get all your documentation in order, and then move towards trying to obtain some of these contracts the right way.
We have one question.
Yeah.
Nina wants to know, is the list that we did from the previous slide, is the list on the SBA website?
I'm so sorry. She said the list on the previous slide.
Yeah, so the
meaning
list of
meaning the types of contracts
that you created, yes.
So where I got that from is I looked at a couple of different websites, which I will go over in a couple of slides later. There are a couple of websites that you can look at and find existing current active contracts or contracts that may be expiring in 2 years or in a year, and they intend to renew them or place it back out to bid, as they say. So the federal government, as well as some of the local governments, have what they call a prospect list and contracting opportunities list. And so they will publish those and they'll tell you what they're going to procure 2 years in advance. Yeah. A good example of that is like this West Palm Beach. The school district down there has a list of their contracting opportunities for the next 2 years. So you know what they're going to be buying and what they need. And it's a way for your company to actually pitch your services to them. I looked up Orange County the other day. Orange County has a list and it's listed on their purchasing department website.
Awesome.
Okay, let's move forward. So that was the federal government. USA Spending, like I said, is that website where you can look at some of the previous contracts and where the money actually went. For the state of Florida, they have a website called the Florida Accountability Contract Tracking System called FACTS, FACTS. So with this website, I actually use this website to do a lot of prospecting in terms of taking a look at what opportunities are currently active. And then I also look for contracts that may be expiring soon. And I do a lot of research and try to find out whether or not those contracts will be rebid. And that's an opportunity for the company to pursue those. The state of Florida alone had $136 billion in contracts from 2019 to 2020. And the biggest departments, they have charts and graphs on there. The biggest departments that they use for or that issue contracts are the court systems, Department of Agriculture. You also have Department of Corrections, Management Services, which is an agency that tends to do like a lot of consulting, strategic planning. They purchase a lot of goods, and then they also have contracts on there for construction and facilities maintenance, stuff like that. Also, some of the other large departments, FDLE with law enforcement, you've got Department of Children and Families. The Department of Transportation is a big one. They also issue a lot of contracts as well. So by using these systems and doing your research, you can figure out which departments have larger budgets, and then you can decide if your company provides services that they might be looking for and target that particular department to pursue contracts with. So that's basically how I use that system. All right, so what I did not do is quickly define government contracting for you. Let's go ahead. So government contracting is simply the process by which a business provides services and products to the federal, state, local government entities, their subsidiaries, and quasi-governmental nonprofits. And this mechanism is really, really good for businesses that do business to business, provide business to business services. Retail doesn't necessarily do as well, although do not get me wrong, I have seen like Carson and Sheen. I saw that they had a contract with the federal government, but again, they were providing like some hair supplies to like troops. But I think that is rare. They did not have any other contracts outside of like the Department of Defense. But, brick and mortar type of stores and retail, they typically do not get involved in government contracting. So if you have that B2B model and can provide the goods and services, that will work.
We had a question.
Sure.
Jones Bryan said, I know this question is more general, but would mental health fall into any of these categories, subcategories?
So when we move forward, I'm going to give you a couple of acronyms that you can look up in their databases. What you can do is type in the services that you want or that you provide, and it will give you a code. You can use that code and go into USA Spending or into the FACTS website and search for that their commodity codes or NAICS codes. That's what they're called. So you can go search for that good or service that you provide and see how much money has been given to other companies that provide the same service. If you don't see it, that means that they don't, contract and procure for that.
Okay. Awesome.
But I would say I have seen mental health services provided more so on a local government level, especially if they have a smaller, like Health and Human Services department. So they may contract out with either nonprofits or other private mental health providers to provide services. So I would probably focus my efforts there.
Okay, local. All right.
All right, so here are some of these key terms. I did not define all of these. This presentation will be available, and I kind of want you guys to do some research on your own and get familiar with these terms. So I'm going to run through a couple of key ones, but these are some of the things that you need to know in terms of pursuing government contracts. So your company, when you legally create your company and get everything registered, you should get a employer identification number or a tax identification number from the IRS. What you will learn with government contracting is you will have about 5 unique identifiers. They are all different.
Yes.
To me, they make no sense. I know somebody thought they did, but literally they are all like social security numbers for your business.
Yeah.
And so I have listed a couple of those here. So like your tax identification number, if you're a sole proprietor or you haven't incorporated your business, don't use your social security number, at least get a TIN. Yeah. If you have incorporated your business, go ahead and get an EIN number, and that should be like your social security number for your business moving forward. So you should use that at all times. To do any government contracting and get a contract or even grant funding, you need to have a DUNS number, which is a 9-digit number provided by a third-party provider called Duns & Bradstreet. To get that number, it's free. You will call a 1-800 number. And they will provide you with a number, and you will hold on to that number for dear life because you have to use it and register as a vendor, not only with the state, but also at the federal level.
And one quick question on the DUNS number. There are 2 different DUNS numbers, right? One for general, for someone who wants a DUNS number to get business credit history going, and then they have to be specifically go for the DUNS number for government contracting, correct? They have to make sure they're...
Yes. So for me, I knew about this, having worked in government. So I told them what my intention was with my business up front. Okay. So I knew that I possibly may pursue government contracts. So if you have not added that, as a potential revenue stream and you don't have your DUNS number, you can certainly call and tell them that you want a DUNS number and that you intend to use it for that purpose. Versus credit building, which is a whole nother opportunity. So then once you have your DUNS number, if you want to pursue contracts with the federal government, you have to register in what they call the System for Award Administration, which is called SAM. Right now it is sam.gov, and they also have a beta site that is called beta, B-E-T-A, .sam.gov. The beta site is full of information where you can actually look at opportunities for contracts and submit a RFP, a proposal, or you can also submit a quote to do business with the federal government. You can look up previous contracts on that beta site as well. So it's kind of an information repository right now, but by the end of the year, or at least in early 2021, they plan to merge the two sites together, and it'll just be sam.gov. And so that is the second step to register with the federal government, and it's actually a lengthy process. So be patient and take your time working through that. They do have a help desk, and so those individuals can help you get registered and make sure that all of your paperwork and documentation that you're entering online is accurate and correct. So some of the other terms that I put up here are ways to get information. Freedom of Information Act. I will talk about that a little bit later and how that can actually help you figure out pricing. So kind of put a pin in that one. Also, you need a SIC code, which is called a Standard Industrial Classification Code. It's a 4-digit code. It is another code that is a keyword for the services or goods that your business provides. And then the second code that you need are the North American Industry Classified System codes, or they're called NAICS codes. My company has 25 NAICS codes registered. The reason for that is every keyword that I can think of for something that we do, whether it is blog writing, content writing, strategic planning, grant writing, grant administration, business development. I literally put all of the keywords that describe every service or function that we do. I enter that keyword into the NAICS code system, and I jot those numbers down. And I also make sure that I put them into SAM for my federal profile. So what that does is it can help direct federal contracting officers to me when they're looking for companies to do business with. And they will look in at SAM, they'll see my company information, find my phone number, and they will call me for a quote. And I've had that happen and missed out on federal contracting opportunities because I was not ready. So all of these systems are a little confusing, which, like I said, it will take an entire another class to really break all of this down, but I'm just here to give you an overview. And I definitely want you guys to go back and kind of do your own research with some of these numbers and how they interact with each other. The state of Florida does not use the NAICS system or the SIC numbers to describe the goods and services that your company provides. They use an entirely different system called the United Nations Standard Products and Services Classification. They're also commonly referred to as commodity codes. Exact same concept. If you provide marketing, you're going to have a different commodity code for the state of Florida than you will for the NAICS code with the federal government. So please, please, please open up a Word document. I use Microsoft OneNote. I just keep typing this stuff in and keep a running profile for the state and the federal government in every city that I register for as a vendor, because all the codes are different. There's no way to get around it. And this is where the confusion comes in when people want to become a government contractor, there's no reciprocity between the entities. So do not be afraid to ask for help. Reach out to people. There are also entities within the city of Orlando that can also help you out at the University of Central Florida. The PTAC offices, there's also the SBA SCORE offices and several other entities that can also help with this information. Yeah, I'm laughing at a comment. I'm sorry.
I saw it too. Florida is extra. We actually had Jason Howells has asked two questions, but I think we're not going that deep into that level, but I'll go ahead and go over them. His first question is, how do you go about submitting a contract on the federal level if you've already gotten SAM's registration approval? And then he continues saying that he has gotten SAM approval, but has never actually submitted a contract and wanted us to walk through that process, which is a very detailed process. And that, so if you would.
So if we move to the next slide, I'm going to talk to you in a high level about our process, which I call ARCS. This will kind of give you an idea of what you should be doing. If you want more detailed information, I have my contact information at the end of the presentation, but this will give you a very high level overview of the steps that you should be taking to actually pursue more of the contracts after you've gotten your registrations and all of your numbers.
Okay.
So we'll go through that. So with the ARCS process, that's ARRCS, that's our process that I go through in terms of doing business development with the company and also what the consultants use as well. One of the first things that we do, or I'll say I did as the business owner, was do an assessment first. I did an assessment to determine whether or not my business was at the right capacity and if it was ready to pursue and scale for government contracts. Just because money is out there doesn't mean that you should go after it, because as you see, this is a very complicated process and it gets even further complicated once you get into it.
Yep.
And we'll talk about why. But you definitely need to assess if you feel like your business is ready at this point. And we'll go into how you can do that a little bit. The next phase is to do research. Are you positive? Have you done market research? Have you looked at the federal and state websites and the local government sites to see if they intend to issue contracts in the future for the goods and services that your company provides? You could go after something that you don't currently provide. I have seen companies pursue opportunities, but you want to make sure that if you're going to do something like that, you have all of your ducks in a row and that let's say you want to provide toilet paper to the Department of Corrections. And you've got a plug, as they say, or somebody who can, get you toilet paper at bulk or at wholesale. Perfectly fine. You can pursue a contract for that, but you got to make sure that your distribution channels and all of those things are going to run smoothly. And then one of the other things you have to do too, as a part of the research piece, is develop your strategy in terms of, do you have access to capital? Can you buy all of this stuff in bulk? Same thing with providing services. You have to have some cash or access to capital, working capital, credit cards, or even business loans to pursue some of these opportunities. And we'll get into those details. The next phase of it is looking at registration. You can sign up to be a vendor and never, ever get certified if you are minority, women-owned, disabled, veteran, any of these things. I actually had contracts before I even got my certification. It was just a matter of being honest. I just didn't want to put in the time to go after the certifications. But I was able to secure a couple of smaller contracts. Do I feel certification helps? Absolutely. And I definitely encourage others to get their certification. And we'll talk about some of those details as well. But I have signed up with several cities in Florida. I am a vendor registered with Tampa, Orlando, Jacksonville, Miami, West Palm Beach, like every city and county, large city and county in Florida. I'm a registered vendor so that I can do business in those areas. And I have done business in those areas. So don't just stay within your own backyard. If this is what you want to do, definitely think about branching out so that you have more opportunities to do more business. And then speaking of certification, there's 19 certifications, which I'll give you a list of. I bet many of you probably did not know that. But there's a list of 19 certifications that you can get from the federal down to the local government level. And I've listed quite a few of those. And you kind of have to look and assess which one is right for your business. And then, of course, as you are doing this assessment, you want to develop a strategy. What marketing tools do you have? How do you show people or tell them what your value proposition is and how you differ from your competitors? As a smaller business, how can you compete or differentiate yourself from a larger company? What makes you unique? You have to put that on paper. And you have to be able to tell that story. I know that you guys have a class later on about that, but it is truly important to be able to tell your story both verbally and in writing. Yeah. Determine what your strategy is going to be. Do you need to focus on local government contracts first and then eventually get to the federal level? Decide which opportunity is best for you. The one thing that can make or break companies, making sure you have the right team and staff on board. Yes. You cannot do a lot of this work as a team of one.
Correct.
So you have to partner and team with individuals who have services and skill sets that you need to make your business more well-rounded. I know it's hard as if you're a single member LLC or any of those things. You do a lot. You wear a lot of hats, from HR, CEO, yes. The marketing person, exactly. Business development. Yeah. You do it all. We do it all. But you cannot appropriately and effectively manage government contracts that way without developing a team. You have to partner with other people.
And partnering with other people opens you up to other contracts that you probably wouldn't have been considered for yourself.
Yes. And I'll talk about some of those as well, because I partner with other companies. So I am a subcontractor to prime contractors, which are larger companies. But that is a way for me to build up my business resume in the government contracting world. I've done both. I've been a prime contractor and I also sub as well, depending upon the opportunity. So that is all a part of my strategy to pursue certain government contracts. So that's a little bit about the process, and then we'll go into a little bit more detail. Let's move forward. So why should you pursue government contracts? So I did a quick little SWOT analysis in terms of why you should pursue it. So some of the strengths are, it's a great way to scale your business and go from 5 to up to 7 figures. It can happen. It has happened for people. And it's definitely another revenue stream for you to consider if you have the goods and services that people want or that these entities want. It provides sustainability. I know a lot of companies, I have met other business owners where they decided to pursue government contracts that helped them expand their businesses, create a second business. Some of them also were able to save their profit or overhead, and then they reinvested it. They have real estate now. There's so many opportunities that this can bring about in your life if you pursue these contracts. Also, one of the other strengths of doing government contracting is at the federal level, there are definitely set asides for women-owned businesses and economically disadvantaged businesses. So they set aside a certain portion of their budget every year to do business with these types of credentialed entities. Florida, unfortunately, as we move to one of the weaknesses, is a race neutral state. What that means is they do not do any set asides, but what they do is when they issue a request for proposal, they will have, as a part of the evaluation process, they will have what they call participation goals. So they encourage larger companies to participate and sign on women-owned, minority-owned businesses and give them opportunities to work on that contract, and they get additional percentage points towards winning that proposal.
Yep.
And so they do track those goals. And so you will get business from doing that. But obviously with partnering with other firms, you kind of definitely have to make sure that that relationship is a win-win for both their company as well as yours. I know companies who have gotten kind of burned by that. So that's kind of one of the weaknesses, in my opinion, that exists for the state of Florida and some of our local governments. They don't do the guaranteed set-asides. One of the other weaknesses, which goes back to access to capital. Being paid can take up to 45 to 60 days.
Yeah.
So what that means is your company needs to have sufficient cash flow to pay for services and pay for staff and wages, materials, all of that sort of stuff up front before you are reimbursed. So that would be a weakness. Also, some companies don't read the contracts that they get, which can get them into trouble depending upon the type of contract that's awarded and also how that contract is funded. If you get federal funding plus like state of Florida funding, there's extra rules attached to that. And so it's very, very important to make sure that you are reading the contracts thoroughly and that you know exactly what it is, what is expected of your company and how to perform. Or you'll end up losing that contract, or worse yet, have to go to court and pay it back.
Yeah. Just because you win a contract doesn't mean that you keep it. They can easily,
terminate it.
Yep. And rebid it.
Yes. So some of the opportunities, it helps your company establish a good reputation. I have what is called a capability statement. I give out that capability statement. It's got my logos of the clients that I've had. You flip it over. It tells you how much money over the 10 years that my company has earned from these contracts. It shows you whether I've been a prime or sub. That is my company's reputation. And I can send that out to prospective clients or also in terms of being able to pitch my services to win additional contracts. So it is a business resume by working on government contracts. It's definitely different than getting client testimonials, if that makes sense. Also, the opportunity allows you to team with larger firms, which can mean larger contracts. So that's a positive attribute right there. That's an opportunity. Also, the rates that you get paid are quite competitive. I will be very forthcoming. As a government employee, I left and went into the private sector and started doing this contracting work. I am paid more. So, that is a opportunity that exists from doing contracting. Some of the threats, you have to do constant business development as the owner of your business. You are constantly out here pitching your services. You are constantly out here networking. You are constantly probably applying for quite a few different certifications, depending upon where you want to pursue contracts. It is an evolution, and it takes sometimes years. You don't get all of this done within 1 year unless you got staff who are running your business. It takes time, so don't get frustrated. Also, it requires you to get really, really good with public speaking and writing. You have to perform in terms of pitching your services as well as writing proposals. And if you don't do those well, you got to make sure that you hire someone who does, like me or the other people that exist in the community, so that they can help you with those services if that's not your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
You will have staff challenges throughout contracting. You may think you have the right team. Some of them may go off and get other contracts, or maybe they're not performing, which then trickles to your company is not performing. You will have to fire people. You will have to constantly do this hiring and firing thing over time to make sure that you can perform the contractual services that you said you could and deliver for those government entities. So that is definitely something that you have to get used to in terms of human capital. And then I actually have seen where some companies have gone bankrupt for lack of access to capital, and they could not float a government contract. So that is highly, highly important.
We have one question. How can we make sure that we aren't being hired to build, say, a broken government unemployment site or a project we don't believe in?
Ooh. Let's see. I personally feel that if you are out here working full time in your business and this is your baby, you have the right to say no. So I would say, in terms of working on a project you don't believe in, just don't. Because at the end of the day, it could cause performance issues for your company, or you could end up being sabotaged in the contract, or your client may not listen to your recommendations. And that really isn't a good contract. And so it goes back to, is all money good money? And the answer is no. And I think that that's one of the freedoms that we have as business owners, where we get to kind of pick and choose somewhat the types of projects that we work on. And obviously you will excel at something that you're passionate and excited about. So I would really hone in on that and try to find those opportunities. As far as making sure that you are being hired to build a broken government, the government unemployment site. Ooh.
So I'll take a stab at this.
Yeah, go ahead, Rose.
One of the things during the proposal process, when you bid on a proposal, you have the opportunity to look over the contract and then ask questions to the government. And so they most times have one or two opportunities for you to submit questions to them to get clarity on what exactly, type of work or what the contract consists of. And so you would need to be sure to always ask questions of things that you're not certain about. So definitely it is on you to make sure you get things clarified before you proceed with bidding on a contract.
And don't sign anything until you know what those requirements are. You need to be crystal clear, especially as it relates to technology. My experience with technology was inside government and having to procure a company to build a system for us or buy a third party like software system. So we had to actually either benchmark other government agencies who had done it before and write out those technical requirements. So that RFP hit the streets. It had our technical requirements, but as Rose said, the companies who responded had an opportunity to come back and ask questions and get clarity on that. Sometimes it forces the government entity to pull the proposal or the bid. They'll pull it and then reissue it later. Yeah. Or they stick with it, hoping somebody will bend and feel what they want.
Yeah.
And that's where, as an owner or a part of a team, you have to be clear about, can I really do this? You need to be clear about, can I do it for this price? Is this are we being set up for failure? And it might not be the right or opportunity for you. And those are all things that you have an opportunity to assess before you actually execute that contract.
Yep.
So I hope that helps, Erica. All right, let's move forward. So kind of getting into the weeds a little bit with some of these other details. When you're doing your research, like I said, you got to ask, do you provide products and services that they need? Where do you want to start? Local government level, state, federal, decide there first. Research department forecast list. That's the list I spoke of where they will tell you what they're going to purchase about 1 to 2 years in advance. Those lists reside either within a purchasing department or it could be a office of small business utilization or office of diversity. Those are kind of areas that you can Google within each government entity and find out what they have. Also, find out who your competitors are. And again, establish what your value proposition is and how you differ from them. So that's all a part of your research. Who commonly bids on these types of contracts? You want to know that because, again, if it's a large company, you have to assess, is this worth my time to try to compete against them? Or go ahead and contact them and see if you can partner, if it's a company that you wouldn't mind partnering with. You don't have to just say no and leave the opportunity on the table, but you might be able to partner with one of those larger firms and get a piece of that contract versus none at all. Your registrations, in terms of registering with various entities, make sure all your business paperwork is together. When I say your paperwork, I'm talking about everything from having a separate business account to having an accounting system that produces financial reports, profit and loss, balance sheets, all of these things that you need for taxes, access to capital, getting funding. You also need it they will ask you about credit and whether or not you have any working capital sometimes in an RFP. You have to have this type of documentation to show proof that you were able to fulfill the services under this contract. Do you have operating agreements? If you're going to partner with someone, do you have a partnership agreement in place? And that spells out how you're going to partner and what that company or that person is going to provide you. Again, making sure you got all of these numbers, your EIN, DUNS number, registered in SAM, that sort of stuff. And then also that you registered as a vendor. And then when it comes to your certifications, determining which one is right for you. Again, whether it's a federal certification, a state or a local one. Also finding someone to help you out with those certifications. We've got a list of the 19 that are here. You can be just a simple certified business enterprise that has no like minority or women's designation on it. That is just your certified business. They've got everything from a disabled business enterprise, Hispanic owned business enterprise. They've got their own certification. One of the newer ones that has popped up, I think in the last probably 2 to 3 years, is the GBTBE. I know Tampa uses that one in terms of who uses it in Florida. I have not looked to see if any of the other local governments utilize that certification, but I know that Tampa and I believe St. Pete does. So that's a new one that has popped up. If you are a minority-owned business, getting your MBE. Veteran, definitely get your certification if you're a veteran. That has some advantages to doing that. Women-owned businesses, you're going to get a WOSB, which is a woman-owned small business. That particular program at the federal level sunsets on October 2020. I'm sorry, I made a mistake there. It sunsets this year. So instead of doing the WOSB, you will have to then move to the WBE, which is Women Business Enterprise. So that's a list of all of the certifications there. I wrote whether it's local or state. All right, let's see. I see another question. We're pursuing for time. the HBCU. Would that apply to grads? No, it does not apply to the grad students. That is actually HBCUs can apply for other government contracts as like an entity of their own. So they can apply for like agriculture contracts and things of that nature, as to give you an example, Brian. So let's talk about pricing as we're moving along here. So how do you figure out like how much you should be charging or what you should be charging as it relates to determining going after a contract? What I did here is kind of build the foundation for the cost that you need to consider in terms of how much it should cost you to perform the services for that contract. So the foundation of everything is your people. Again, you cannot do any of this alone. Every once in a while, you can be a contractor for someone else where you're paid that hourly wage or a flat fee, and that's perfectly fine. But if you're trying to scale your business, you will need other contractors or other employees. And so they're going to be the backbone of performing the services for a contract. So you've got wages and time to consider. Other things you need to consider are what sort of materials, equipment, or software do you need? You want to build that into your cost for doing business. Do you need a facility or any storage facilities? Oftentimes with government contracts, depending upon how they're funded, they may ask you to keep electronic copies or physical copies of paperwork, etc., for a certain number of years. It can range from 3 up to 10 years, depending upon the type of contract. So you need to kind of pay attention to some of these things as you read a request for proposal and figure out, should you be adding this cost into your pricing? What is your risk? All companies, typically with a government entity, have to have insurance, general, errors and omission, workman's comp. Sometimes you also have to have vehicle insurance if you're going to be driving around doing business for that contract or any of your contractors. There's a cost for that. And sometimes they want you to have policies that are well over $2 million. That cost runs you between about $150 up to $300 a month. And so these are some of the costs that you have to add into doing bidding for contracts. And then, of course, you've got overhead and profit rates, which those typically range between 10 to 20% that you can add on top. So how do you find out like what you should be charging? That's the $1 million question. One, the same way you would potentially, if you were working for an employer and you wanted to get a raise, you got to do some market research. If you don't have information readily available about how much you and your coworkers are making, perhaps, you've got to go do some market research. Honestly, let's take a project manager. A project manager is a standard kind of position for a service-based government contract. Project manager fees, you can go do some research on the internet and find out what their hourly rates are, or on average, how much they get paid per year. When it comes to government contracts, you will see a range anywhere from like $85 up to $200+ because that person is managing the entire project and all of the staff. So that kind of gives you an idea there. One of the other things you can do is, I mentioned some other words like Freedom of Information Act or Public Information Request. One of the tricks that I use is if I'm going after RFP and I know that a company had this prior to me pursuing it, I will actually email or call the state and ask them for a copy of the previous proposal. Under the Sunshine Law with the state of Florida, and also the Freedom of Information Act at the federal government, you can request these documents and they can send them to you electronically and redacted. So they won't send you any proprietary information, but you can get an idea of how this proposal was written. Also, how did they price this to do similar type of work? One of the other websites I mentioned, the FACTS website for the state of Florida, where you can look up existing contracts. Mm-hmm. That FACTS website has actual attachments. If you do a search on there and find an active contract, they upload the contracts to that website. You can download that contract and see exactly how much those companies are charging. And that's a great way for you to do market research and find out, am I charging the right amount of money, or am I undervaluing this service or this good? Market research, salaries, you can still kind of do something like Glassdoor and get a range, you know, that type of thing. Yeah, so those are just a couple of tricks that you can use to kind of find out what the salaries and things are for labor and how much you can charge or should be charging. All right, so one of the two ways, kind of wrapping up, to effectively win contracts, you definitely want to build relationships. Everybody will stress relationships are the key to success. You want to build relationships with larger companies. You want to build relationships with companies that provide services that you may need to team together and go after a contract. Again, don't do any of this alone to start out with. Build those relationships. Also, if let's say you want to do business with Orange County government, go in and have a conversation with them. Pitch your services or your business to them after doing your research. I'll give you an example with the Palm Beach School District. They had someone come in to their Office of Supplier Diversity. The school district does not buy uniforms or any apparel whatsoever, but a company came in there and pitched uniforms to them. And that particular company did not do their research to figure out that the school district does not even buy that commodity. And so had he done his research, he would not have wasted that time pitching to them, knowing that they had no opportunities for him to do business with them. And so, unfortunately, behind the scenes, stuff like that can not necessarily leave a good view in someone's mind when you do things like that and you don't do your homework. So you definitely want to go in and build relationships and have conversations with the employees in the offices, the contracting officers. If it's a larger company, find out who is responsible for their partnerships or purchasing. Give them a call, take them to lunch, to coffee, do whatever you need to do. Have conversations with them and see if you can build a partnership. It doesn't happen overnight. You might have to have a couple of conversations. But doing this type of homework and this work up front can actually make you memorable. And so when a contract opportunity does come about, they'll send you an email with it before they put it out to the general public sometimes. These are all little tips and tricks that people truly aren't aware of. There's a saying that sometimes if you apply for the RFP, you're too late in the process.
Yeah, yes.
And that is because there have been companies already building those relationships ahead of time. Yeah. And that's that business development part. You know, of course, writing winning proposals, that is an art. It is not easy. So again, if that is not your wheelhouse, it's perfectly okay, but make sure that you have either a team around you that you can delegate portions of that request for proposal to, or you need to hire somebody for that. But these are typically the two ways that people win contracts. They're either writing that RF or the proposal to respond to a request for proposal, or they're pitching ahead of time and actually getting contracts that way before it even hits the streets, or it never even hits the street. So it is a system, but play in it. So I do want you guys to indulge me for a second. This has become one of my favorite movies that talks about contracting. It's a crash course in contracting from Hollywood, and it's called War Dogs. Don't know if anyone has seen it, but it's about two very young friends. They're in their 20s. They saw, and it's a true story, they saw opportunity with the federal government to provide bullets and other ballistics materials to the government during the Iraq War. They won a $300 million bid. First one. But they lost it. So make sure you watch that movie. It's got some good lessons in there, in case you haven't gone down the path for government contracting yet. So definitely make sure you watch that. It's a wonderful movie, and teaches you about kind of government contracting at the federal level. Let's move ahead. All right, so how can we work together? There are other services that I provide specifically to businesses in terms of business advisory service, if we'll move ahead. We certainly provide business and corporation services and contract development. I am the certified contract manager, and I've got a paralegal I work with too. We draft stuff. I have lawyers on tap if needed to review things, but do a pretty good job with that. And I've got templates. We do market research, help you develop your business model, target customer identification, strategic planning, business plans. We've got you covered. We do the proposal and pitch development for you with a graphic designer. We also help you with certifications in case some of it is over your head, or you get frustrated, or you simply don't have time because you're wearing too many hats. We will definitely go ahead and serve as a proxy and complete that paperwork, as well as educate you during the process more about government contracting, because we've been through it. And then we also have access to capital in terms of getting access to business working capital and loans. So I have a small business app guide in case some of you want to be more efficient with your business and are looking for some apps to do stuff from project management to a good accounting system, any of that type of stuff. So you can certainly text that number and download that PDF. And then in 2 weeks, myself and my tax accountant, Deanna Grant, are going to be doing a Facebook Live where we will be talking about eliminating the risk of audit for PPP and EIDL loans. We've gone through the fine print and want to point out some clauses to you guys if you've gotten that funding to make sure that you're aware of, so that you are not an audit risk or will have to repay that money back. So we'll be going over some of that, and then we'll be launching a Beyond Business Basics CEO series later this summer, where we're going to take some CEOs where we get busy and sometimes we don't have some documentation in order. So we'll be walking everyone back through getting that documentation and setting things up properly so that you can pursue more access to funding. So that'll be launching early fall.
Awesome. And I just wanted to put out there that Sharice is also going to be one of our speakers for our Business Basics webinar in the Tech Startup series. And so she will be doing that. And hopefully she will also be doing our funding/raising capital webinar also, because she's just a wealth of information.
All right. So we have any last minute questions?
Yes. So we had one question. Tanya Burke, I think you are on YouTube, and you said, what was that URL? I think you were referring to the FACTS website. I put it down. If you were, it is FACTS.FLD as in dog, F as in Sam.com. If you click that, that'll take you to the FACTS Florida website that she was discussing. If that was not the URL that you were looking for, please comment again and clarify which one you're looking for. Do we have any other questions? Please be sure to send the text message. It was the Fund Finders. Let me see. The Fund Finders. Yep. To 3777.
Mm-hmm.
I just sent it. I'm getting download. I'm getting my PDF. Okay. So please remember to do that. Oh, awesome. Okay, that was it for Tanya. Awesome.
Okay.
Yep. And also be sure to get Sharice's information and contact her if you, especially those who are really looking into getting into government contracting. Definitely, reach out and contact her. Any other questions? Okay.
All right. Thank you, guys. Until later in the month.
Yeah.